Why do so many movies crash and burn in Act 2? It's because the protagonist isn't disrupting the plot. Think of it like the difference between a sponge and a garden hose. A sponge absorbs everything around it, but a garden hose actively disrupts the environment. The same is true for protagonists. One spends Act 2 dealing with whatever the screenplay puts in front of them, and the other takes what the story gives them and does something to change the situation. That's what I mean by being a disruptor. In this video, I'm not going to talk about thematic questions, or worldviews, or strategies, or arcs, or any of that stuff. Instead, I'm going to isolate one specific thing. What does the protagonist do in Act 2A, and what effect does it have? So to do that, we're going to look at two movies with the same hero. Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, and Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. We're going to start with Crystal Skull and go through everything from the Act 1 turn to the midpoint, and then we're going to do the same thing for Last Crusade. After that, we're going to compare them, and we're going to talk about why one of them works and why the other one is Crystal Skull. Alright, Crystal Skull. Let's go through the first act. Act 1 leaves Indy with a simple mission. Harold Oxley has disappeared, Mutt's mother has been kidnapped, and Ox's coded letter points towards Peru. So Indy and Mutt go to Peru. That's the Act 1 turn, Indy and Mutt going to Peru. Act 2A. We get the familiar Indiana Jones map as Mutt and Indy travel to Peru. There, Indy asks about Oxley and learns that Ox has wandered into town acting insane before being committed to a sanitarium. That gives them their next destination. At the sanitarium, a nun tells Indy that armed men have already taken Ox away. She shows Indy and Mutt his old cell, where Ox covered the walls and floor with drawings and writing. Indy deciphers what Ox left behind and realizes that it points towards Francisco de Orellana and a nearby cemetery. Off to the cemetery, where masked guardians attack them. Indy and Mutt fight them off and continue looking for Orellana's grave. They find the hidden entrance and descend into the tomb, where Indy navigates the burial chamber, identifies Orellana and his men, and finds the crystal skull hidden with Orellana's body. When Indy and Mutt emerge with the skull, Mac and the Soviets are waiting. The Soviets take the skull and capture them. That's Act 2A. And the important thing isn't that Indy is passive. He obviously isn't. He's the one deciphering Ox's message. He's interpreting the drawings. He's locating the tomb and identifying the skull. The problem is that almost everything he needs has already been left there for him. Ox went to the sanitarium. Indy discovers that. Ox left the drawings. Indy deciphers them. The drawings point towards Orellana. Indy follows them. Orellana's tomb contains the skull. Indy finds it. The cemetery guardians attack. Indy defeats them and resumes the same course he was already on. Indy's very good at solving the movie, but he's mostly extracting the next beat from something that already exists. Now let's look at Last Crusade. Last Crusade, Act 1. Henry Jones has disappeared while searching for the Holy Grail. Indy receives his father's Grail diary and realizes that Henry sent it because he was in trouble and decides to take Donovan's ticket to Venice, so Indy goes looking for his father. That's the Act 1 turn. So let's look at Act 2A. Donovan sees Indy and Marcus off at the airport and warns Indy not to trust anyone. On the flight, Indy studies Henry's Grail diary and notices a drawing of a stained glass window accompanied by a series of numbers. They arrive in Venice and meet Elsa Schneider. This is his father's research partner, and she's beautiful. She explains that Henry disappeared while searching for the tomb of one of the Grail Knights and gives Indy the scrap of paper that Henry left behind. At the library, Indy recognizes the stained glass window from the diary, and he connects the numbers to the columns around the room. And here's where the big differences start between Last Crusade and Crystal Skull. Henry's clues don't simply tell Indy where to go next. It's Indy who realizes that the knight's tomb is underneath the library. X marks the spot. There's no doorway waiting for him. Indy destroys the floor. Indy has physically created access to a part of the mystery that wasn't available before this. So he and Elsa descend into the catacombs, and they find the knight's tomb. But again, Indy doesn't simply arrive and discover the next completed clue. Henry never finished this part of the puzzle. Indy does. He takes the rubbing from the knight's shield that completes the missing section of the Grail inscription. That's a very different kind of clue scene from what we're seeing in Crystal Skull. Then Kazim and the Brotherhood attack. Indy and Elsa survive the fire in the catacombs, and they escape into Venice, where the attack turns into a boat chase. And now again, Indy could simply escape and continue the investigation, but instead he goes after Kazim. Indy boards his boat, he fights him, and he ultimately saves him from being shredded by a ship's propeller. My soul's prepared to die. How's yours? I think that it's something like that. Then he tells Kazim that he doesn't care about the Grail. All he wants to do is find his father. So that changes the relationship. Kazim stops treating Indy as an enemy, and he tells him something that Indy didn't know before, which is that Henry is being held at Castle Brunwald. So by this point in the film, Indy's already created 2 new pieces to the story. He's completed the Grail inscription, and he's turned an enemy into the source of where his father's being held. Back at Donovan's apartment, Marcus combines Indy's rubbing with Henry's diary and identifies Alexandretta as the starting point for the route to the Grail. Now Indy has 2 destinations. One leads to the Grail, the other leads to his father. So it's Indy who decides what happens next. He tells Marcus to contact Sala and take the Grail information towards Alexandretta, and Indy goes to Austria to rescue Henry. The story is now split in 2 because of a decision made by Indy. Indy discovers that his room was ransacked, and then he goes to Elsa's room, and it looks like her room was ransacked as well. He reveals to her that Henry mailed the Grail diary to him, meaning that whoever searched the rooms failed to find it. And then they sleep together. Off to Austria. At the castle, Indy is confronted with another problem. He has to get inside, but nobody hands him the solution. The magic door doesn't just open. He has to invent a way to get inside, so he poses as a Scottish lord so that he can look at the tapestries. And that doesn't really work out, so he just punches the guy and continues on into the castle. Inside, Indy discovers Nazis, and he searches the castle for his father, and he locates the room where his father's being held. He climbs around the outside of the castle, and he crashes through the window. He's found Henry. He's found his father. The mission that brought him into Act 2 has been accomplished. But look at what else Indy has done. He brought Henry's Grail diary into a Nazi stronghold. Henry immediately realizes the danger. He mailed the diary away specifically because he knew that the Nazis wanted it. The Nazis surround them. Indy grabs a machine gun. He kills the guards. He tries to get Henry out of the castle. They go looking for Elsa, and they find her being held at gunpoint by Vogel. Henry realizes what's happening before Indy does, and then the Midpoint Explosion, right? Elsa's working with the Nazis, and she takes the diary from Indy. The only reason that the diary is there is because Indy brought it. So he's the one delivering the story, disrupting the events of the story. Indiana Jones in Last Crusade is a garden hose. Indiana Jones in Crystal Skull, he's kind of a sponge. So let's compare them. Both movies are doing the same basic Indiana Jones stuff. Coded messages, archaeological puzzles, ancient tombs, fights, travel, maps, all that stuff. Of course, there's going to be a procedural aspect to what Indy does. It's a movie about clues and hidden treasure, and Indy is an archaeologist in a treasure hunt movie. The difference is what happens when Indy gets involved in the plot. That's the distinction I care about. Because a sponge receives the next beat, and a disruptor helps create it. Does that make sense? Good. So how do writers fall into this trap in the first place? Well, this is an incredibly easy trap to fall into because writers spend a lot of time coming up with clever shit. We come up with a great mystery, we need a clever clue to unlock another piece of the mystery, and then that leads to a reveal that you really like, which sets up the twist that you've been saving, and before long, you're organizing Act 2 around getting the audience from one cool idea to the next. Mysteries make this particularly easy to spot. Look at Knives Out, the Knives Out movies. A lot of their construction is about controlling information and moving us from one revelation to the next revelation. The characters are often there to reveal another piece of the mystery that's already been designed. But compare that with Clue, the OG of murder mystery movies. The characters in Clue are constantly changing the landscape of the mystery they're trying to solve. Their behavior creates new problems, new suspicions, and new information. The mystery isn't just sitting there waiting to be uncovered because the people inside it keep fucking with it. And that's the danger in Act 2. You can become so focused on the clues and the reveals and the twists and the set pieces that you've crafted that your protagonist quietly becomes the person whose job is just to carry us from one cool thing to the next cool thing. And that's exactly what happens in the Crystal Skull. Now, look, there were a lot of issues with with Crystal Skull, but this is a major part of that because I think if Indy was more active and more of a disruptor, we could have forgiven the movie for some of the other shortcomings. Maybe not. I don't know. But hopefully this distinction makes sense. So what's the takeaway? What's the big takeaway here? If your act 2 is dragging, don't immediately add another action scene or invent another twist. Go through the section and look at what your protagonist is actually doing. What's he contributing to the chain of events? And again, following clues isn't inherently passive, and neither is reacting to something that another character does. The question is whether your hero, your protagonist, eventually puts something new back into the story. So, final thought, make sure that your hero is a garden hose and not a sponge. I hope you found this video entertaining and educational, and if you have anything to say, put it in the comments below. Until next page, I'm Matt Weiner, and this is Fade In, a channel dedicated to the art of screenwriting.